Hi, and we're here today with Olivia Sayward to talk about mushrooms. I'd say magnificent mushrooms because really they're like such amazing creatures or beings. And I met Olivia in Berlin at, uh, I would call it Mushroom Circle. Anyway, it was where mushroom enthusiasts were gathered and we did fun things. Maybe we'll mention some of them as we go. And I'll just quickly introduce Olivia. Olivia is a holistic practitioner who offers guided quantum healing hypnosis sessions that support connection to the higher self, your inner source of wisdom, healing, and soul guidance. These sessions awaken imagination, intuition, and self healing in an expanded state of awareness. And she also uses these tools to assist groups at monthly meetups in Berlin in connecting to the other realms of our Earth, whether with plants or other Earth beings. Yeah. Okay, so Olivia, can you share a little bit about yourself, I guess, and how you came to this moment and all the things that you were doing?
Yeah, so I actually studied illustration. I went to art school. So the last decade, more than a decade, I've been kind of focused on design and art. But yeah, a couple 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of um had life hit me with a bunch of challenges all at the same time, and so that really made set me on kind of the search for healing and answers. And it was a time when kind of my time was getting a little bit more flexible, and so I was going to different healers and yeah, just looking for answers. And one of the first things that I did was I had a quantum healing hypnosis session, and it really connected to me to how to hear my own soul guidance and where I'm from and kind of my whole experience as a soul and as a being. And that was very expansive and kind of led to me wanting to offer the same thing. So that kind of shot me off into the stars for several months or a couple years. And then eventually I
What
came
does
back.
that?
I guess just a lot of meditation, a lot of different journeys, connecting to different realms and planets and kind of figuring out a lot about the history of Earth and where it all comes from and how the ancient civilizations were connected to the stars. And yeah, but eventually I kind of came back down to Earth, and that's where kind of the plants and the mushrooms helped a lot and really started attracting me and helped me to kind of focus on this life and the experience that we're having as earthlings, and all the amazing things that plants and mushrooms can do and how they can help us heal and ground. And yeah, and they're also connected, particularly plants are connected to the whole cosmos. And it's been a lot of fun to kind of see the patterns that are working throughout all the different layers of being.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that was my kind of hero's journey out into the cosmos and back. And so I learned how to offer those sessions myself. They're 3 to 4 hours long, kind of going through our life history, and then 2 hours of kind of journeying through different experiences. Yeah, and then the other part of what I'm focusing on is the plants and the mushrooms, like focusing more on the physical body, the physical experience, and how we can stay healthy and stay present and enjoy the experience that we're having here.
And so, regarding your sessions, I don't know, have you seen or do you watch The Wheel of Time? Have you
No, I haven't heard of it.
Oh, you haven't heard of it?
No.
Okay, well, I haven't had a quantum healing session myself, but I've heard from people about it, and I've read a few things. not much. Anyway, what you're describing sounds like what the main character was going through. So he was Rand, kind of like dragon reborn, and the main character who is supposed to save the world. And one of the things that he absolutely has to do is to learn where he's coming from and his history, and of course the family history going thousands of years back. And so that was one of the experiences that was really cool. Yeah, so it turns out we can kind of like do the same.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the sessions are super interesting and diverse. Some people go into family history, some people go into past lives or lives on other planets or lives in animal bodies or just as like energetic beings moving through space. So it's always very exciting to see what comes up and the messages and guidance always has to do with whatever we're going through right now in our normal lives.
Hmm. Well, and so you mentioned a little bit about the next question I was going to ask you, why the mushrooms, and you did mention a little bit that this is what grounded you after you traveled to the stars. But can you share a little bit more about mushrooms and what you find interesting, or how mushrooms found you?
Yeah, I think what opened the door a little bit more was I took a herbalism, like a month-long herbalism and permaculture course a couple years ago. And we did have a chapter on mushrooms too. And so we briefly went through mushroom cultivation and kind of how to cook them and how they work and how they help the body. And so that was probably the door opener in one way. And then the other part has just been learning how to forage around Berlin and in Brandenburg and recognizing more and more mushrooms. And I think I guess what has been so enjoyable about it is because it really feels like being a kid again and going on like a scavenger hunt and like looking for them and spending, just hours running around the forest, with activating other senses. And so that's been just like the fun of that, of discovery and hanging out with your friends in the forest is also the other way that it kind of opened the door. And then obviously various like psychedelic experiences over the years have always been big lessons or have taught me a lot or helped me kind of come back to that like childlike sense of wonder and excitement. And yeah, what's been super interesting for me the last year is also just like looking at the medicinal benefits of mushrooms and seeing the various ways that they can help our body. And I've been really just surprised about that, particularly looking at like Amanita muscaria, the red and white mushroom that we're really familiar with.
We got to try at that gathering. Yeah. So I was just gonna share quickly that you offered us to have a little bit of tincture with Amarita mushroom that you made, right? And for those who don't know the name, maybe it's a very you probably have seen this mushroom many times. And it's a beautiful with a red cap and the white spot. Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because there's so much fear surrounding that mushroom. Everyone thinks of it as being toxic and dangerous, and it is. So, like, it shouldn't be consumed without a lot of research beforehand or knowing the right people who can kind of guide you. But it's an amazing medicine. Like, there are several books about it, and they talk a lot about how it can help people um, move away from alcoholism. It helps a lot with clarity and kind of getting your priorities um, straight, and helps against depression and anxiety, and just like a huge array of different things. Also, joint pain topically. And so that's been very interesting because I find, and I speak, it goes for me as well. Sometimes we look to like other cultures for medicine, or we travel, here and there and everywhere to kind of find answers that are further afield. And those are also beautiful medicines, but it's super interesting and exciting to know that this mushroom is growing, all over Europe, and that it is something that we can learn from or learn with. So that's also been very inspiring to me to just see like, oh wow, there's this amazing medicine that is all over, Europe's Christmas decorations, and like it's like hidden in plain sight everywhere. Everyone knows the emoji, or it's this like cross-cultural reference icon that ends up everywhere, and it turns out to be a really spectacular medicine if used in tiny, 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 tiny amounts.
And it's really interesting that the look of it, right? Because probably, well, we shared a little bit that now you're also studying different plants in the context of astrology. And by the look of the plant, you can also tell some things, which planet they're connected to, what is the energy, and what is the kind of like the use cases, what and who is could can it help as an ally. And so I'm wondering now, what is it bright? It's somehow very uplifting. I think it's the I don't know what you shared about it being in medicine, although that helps with depression, and maybe it talks about that. But I don't. I wonder if you have anything to say about the super look.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't made too many visual connections about it yet, but there is something interesting about it being so obvious, It's so easy to find. It's like the easiest one to identify. So, yeah, there's something interesting about that, and kind of that red, you know, the color of blood or the color of the heart or kind of life,
Mhm.
but at the same time, danger too. It's definitely a double-sided sword. Like, it's definitely not a mushroom that you would want to try eating or eat a lot of ever. There's really terrible stories of like what people have experienced if they've overdone it.
Yeah, yeah, and as you said, probably makes sense first to do some research or consult with someone before even trying to, take it internally in any way. So, and what is it that makes mushrooms magnificent beings? Like, what are some unique, maybe characteristics that mushrooms have, plants don't have, and humans don't have?
Yeah, I guess the two of the most exciting things about them is, on the one hand, they're able to like really transform things. So, they transform dead material, old material into something new, into their bodies, which I guess is probably, when I'm thinking about the human body, is probably what's happening internally as well when we're ingesting some of these mushrooms. Um, is yeah, just amazing, this ability to turn trash or like things that are on the verge of death into new life. And so we're really dependent on them to kind of like clean up the forest and take care of all the dead trees, dead leaves, all the dead organic matter. And then on the other hand, there are other mushrooms that are connecting. So they attach to the roots of trees, and they are basically passing nutrients between trees or between different plants. So those are kind of the two super interesting things that they do and that they then help with, and that even, meditating on mushrooms or with mushrooms, those are themes that can come up. So when I've guided these mushroom meditations in the group, like that you came to the one time, then it's these themes of connectivity that are popping up in people's meditations as well. Feeling connected to the whole forest, connected to each other. It's always like a really interesting contrast of like the group before the meditation and then the group after. There's like this real feeling of connection afterwards, and kind of I don't know, giggliness. Yeah. There's also kind of like a slight trickster energy to mushrooms, and it's fun to it's fun to also feel or experience that within the group as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, really amazing. It's, the the those 2, characteristics that you named, and I guess well, I know that, there are more, and you can, like, people if people are not kind of haven't experienced that, you can just, go into the forest and, check out some trees. Probably every tree you can find some mushrooms, traces of mushrooms, and there are kind of like some mushrooms have special relationships with some trees. For example, the birch tree, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, they're there and they're somewhat invisible compared to trees and plants where like out there and waving at you, but the mushrooms not so much. But then it's like, they're ubiquitous. I guess cycle of a life and death cycle, it wouldn't happen, right?
Yeah, if it weren't for the mushrooms, you know, we wouldn't be here because we'd just be covered in like dead material. So they're really the connectors, and they also do a lot of like cleanup and restoration. And so those are also the things that happen with like mushroom medicine. There's certain mushrooms that you would take that help with, cognitive function, and also with the psychedelic ones, like forming new pathways in our brains. And then there are the other mushrooms like the fly agaric, the Amanita muscaria or reishi, or other ones that help a lot more with kind of like internal body issues.
Yes, exactly. And that effect, for example, on the nervous system and on the brain and increasing connectivity in the brain. This is like a really cool example of how plants kind of share their special abilities and characteristics with us if we have care to ask and to receive. Yeah. And if someone has taken psychedelics, people probably would know that psilocybin mushrooms that they have this effect where a lot of people just experience this connection and being kind of one interconnected with the whole world and its beings.
Hmm.
Yeah, so super beautiful. So, um, how do you approach mushrooms? Let's say if you want to somehow learn more about mushrooms or connect with mushrooms, how would you do that?
Definitely get out in the forest and go just observe and look at them and find a good teacher somewhere who can introduce a couple and can introduce some of the rules of like, what to avoid. Luckily in Europe, there aren't any mushrooms that we have to worry about touching. So that's a nice thing to know already, is like you can go and touch them, without having to worry. So definitely just get comfortable with touching them too. I mean, a lot of people are like afraid of them at first because they're, slimy or squidgy or um, unpredictable. But yeah, I guess just get out there and enjoy the diversity of how they look and feel. And then, yeah, there's definitely, lots of good books out there, especially in the last 10 years about medicinal mushrooms or about just how they even work and what they do and their role in the forest. So those are good ways to connect, and then also try out different medicines. It's always good to get a bit of information beforehand of like, how they work and also what to avoid. So obviously know your own body, your own symptoms, and then yeah, go from there.
Would you say that probably to connect, you don't even need to ingest, take internally, right? Because we have other senses that we can connect through. And if we're not talking, let's say, so we're not going to give any advice to people to eat mushrooms. Of course, it takes some research. But
Mhm.
how would you kind of connect? Because also one of the things that you mentioned is that mushrooms has this very grounded quality, even as opposed to plants that you said points where they connected to planets and stars. And there's this whole like astrology, astrological herbalism film. But how would you connect to mushrooms in this context? What would you connect to them for?
Um, so I mean, basically, we have the ability to connect to anything, and
Hmm.
it's just a question of practice and kind of taking the time and making the time. And so, if there is a certain mushroom that you want to connect to, whether you've found it in the forest and you want to connect to it there, or even if you're at home and you just want to connect to, like, the energy of a certain mushroom, um, you just have to, take some time and bring your body into a relaxed state, kind of start at the top of your head, move down to your feet and relax every part, and then choose to connect to it and um, see what happens, take notes, maybe do drawings. And some days it'll work really well and things will come quite easily to you. And then other days it can be a little bit trickier. Might fall asleep because you get too relaxed. And yeah, it's often a lot easier to do it with a guided meditation or with the help of someone else, but it is something that anyone can do and can do as often and as much as they want. And so every in the case of plants, every plant has kind of an oversoul, so you can connect to the energy of a plant and kind of figure out or feel out what it does in the body, what its role is in the ecosystem, whether it has a certain energy or personality. And you can do the same for mushrooms as well. They do have a very like different feeling though. Like a plant is a lot more, I guess, kind of almost like a human, but like very, very gentle. So it can be very, very subtle and sometimes a little harder to connect to sometimes because it's so soft and doesn't communicate in a way that uses, words or structures the way that we do. And with mushrooms, it's a lot more of a diffuse awareness. So especially with like the mushrooms that are connecting parts of the forest, it's kind of a much broader awareness that is maybe feels quite abstract to us or to our brains or the way that we think, but it's definitely something to experiment with and to try out. And I mean, I don't do it enough. I also often like, go towards books and kind of want to see what other people think or feel, but we're all capable of creating our own relationships and receiving and getting access to that information on our own as well.
Mm. Yeah. And one of the things that I heard, I don't know if you resonate with it or not, is that when you need something, it tends to pop up or get in somehow into your field of attention. And actually, something that had just happened to me because I've been into gardening big time, big time, but it actually comes in waves because that there's the whole. It's like you go through real life cycles with plants. And
Mhm.
I'm learning a lot and I didn't expect that it takes so much emotional energy, not physical energy, but emotional. Like I want to give this up and then like, oh wow, new things spring up. And one of the plants that for me, all of a sudden it was like planting different things and nothing came up. And then it was borage,
Mhm.
this plant. And it was like all of a sudden it's very big. It's tons of it. Like what does it mean? And it's actually this plant energetically is about courage, which is very relevant to me. And I'm looking forward to connect it. I just discovered it a couple of days ago. Oh.
Cool, yeah, I found a big field of it today. I went on,
Mm.
like, a long walk, and it was, like, entire purple, blue field of borage, and I ate a bit in my salad. But,
Mm.
yeah, I was just thinking about that today as well, like, kind of walking taking walks with, like, this awareness or curiosity about the plants around us, like, kind of occurred to me, it's like learning a whole other language, and it's exciting because you I can definitely feel, that my attention turned to certain plants or pulled towards certain plants, and then sometimes I'll just, quickly take a photo, and then later if I check it, then I'm like, "Oh, wow, that makes so much sense that pulled in my focus." And it's definitely kind of a practice that we can keep on growing. It's just like this being aware of our surroundings, seeing what plants are around us, and they tell us a lot of clues. So, last week I was biking through Poland, through the south, and I've never seen so many nettles in my life. There's just like nettles everywhere, like big and bushy and super green, and it's a plant that's kind of related to Mars and prickly and very active and charged. And it was interesting to be biking through Poland, and the elections were just about to happen, and in the south at least they had a lot of the conservative candidate hanging up, a lot of like yards with like big fences and big houses, and then this conservative political candidate. And I couldn't help but notice, like, oh wow, there's like nettles everywhere that like helps against getting out anger and getting out being pissed off, like the medicine is right here.
Mm.
And then um and then we took a train up to northern Poland, and it was like completely different plants, a lot more relaxed people, different political candidates hanging on in people's yards. So you can learn a lot about like the patterns of even just a place by the plants that are growing abundantly around.
Yeah, yeah, that is all it takes is just be curious, right? And also it's so exciting because I think it pulls you, on my experience, it pulls you out of the everyday. You just all you need to do is just open the eyes and be open to see something new and not take anything for granted. And yeah, it's so cool. They take you on a journey without you needing to take any psilocybin mushroom.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, well, was super interesting to talk about mushrooms and also plants, but we're getting to the end. And can you share with what you're up to these days?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm just kind of transitioning more and more into being able to offer sessions and being able to offer guidance around plants and mushrooms and which ones to work with, like, based on an individual to individual situation. So, yeah, you can find me at whiterabbitjourneys.com for the quantum sessions, and then um, on Substack, I'm Olivia Sayward. So, uh,
Like
yeah,
rabbit
just
journeys.
linked with this.
And do this journey, they can happen also online or is it not?
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
they can happen both in person and online. Online works just as well, even better for some people because they're already in their safe space at home.
I can imagine that. And what are you up to in terms of plants, maybe seasonally? Like, are you collecting now anything, like foraging for anything, or doing any preparation with plants, or where your curiosity goes? as far as the plants at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment I'm down in southern Germany, so I'm just like super excited to see what's growing here. So I've just been um trying to recognize as many as I can around me and pick as many as I can and trying to eat foraged foods every day. Um I had an interesting conversation with some friends a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how eating foraged plants like really changes your whole gut balance and your gut flora. So, been thinking a lot about that and just seeing how that goes. And then the next week or the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be kind of focusing on rosemary because I'm going to do a meetup in Berlin, and the plant of the month will be rosemary. So, yeah, where I'm staying, there's a huge rosemary bush. So, I'm going to experiment a little bit with like what kinds of medicines and concoctions to make with rosemary.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying and have a good couple rosemary plants in my garden, just waiting to see which one, if any of them, will grow big. Hopefully, yeah. And I'll check out the date, see if I can also make it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Olivia, for that. And yes, you can connect with Olivia on Substack and then the Take a Journey, the White Rabbit Journey, and I'll share the links. Um,
Yes, thank you for the conversation and the idea.
yeah. Okay. Well, then have a good day. And thanks for whoever joined. We really appreciate your presence. And yeah, then see you next time. Bye.
Bye.